Shalom, and welcome to Psychology of the Parsha for Parshat Mikeitz. Mikeitz means at the end of. The Parsha begins, Vayhi Mikeitz Shnatayim Yamim, and it was at the end of 2 years. 2 years from what? Well, at the end of last week's Parsha, if you recall, Yosef had interpreted the dreams for the chief butler and for the head baker. And he asked the chief butler, he says, Pharaoh is going to reinstate you to your position. Please remember me, mention me, remind me before Pharaoh. Tell him about my plight. And what does it say? Last week's Parsha concludes, V'lo zachar Sarah mashkim et Yosef. The chief butler did not remember Yosef. In fact, it even adds emphasis by saying, Vayishkachehu, and he had forgotten him. However, as our Parsha opens up, Vayehi Mikeitz Shnatayim Yamim. It was at the end of 2 full years, an additional 2 full years of suffering. And if I may, I want you to think about the effect of this suffering. True, Yosef had been away from home for 20 years. He had some good moments. He had the time that he spent in prison, being accused for something he had never done. That's difficult. But imagine how much more difficult it gets. And the agony of one who suddenly has a ray of hope, something to grab onto, and that, the letdown. If I may, I would suggest that these last 2 years were even more difficult than the first 20 years. Only after these 2 years, suddenly, the story of Pharaoh and his dreams and the predicament of finding him somebody who can interpret the dreams, and finally Yosef gets his moment to shine. And then the rest of the story is where he's the king and he's there in charge of helping the masses who are coming to buy food, to buy basic sustenance for their survival. And then the brothers show up, and then we all know the end of the story. Why did Yosef have to suffer these 2 years? The Torah emphasizes that it was a full 2 years. Well, the sages tell us, quoting the verse from Jeremiah, and in fact we say this verse every time we do the Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meal, we concluded with saying, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Hashem V'Haya Hashem Yiftachu. Blessed is the man, blessed is the one who puts his faith in Hashem, and his exclusive faith is in Hashem. His only trust is in Hashem. Yosef, tell us the sages, on the level that he was, should have not put any hope whatsoever, any confidence in this mortal being, in the chief butler. For that, he was punished. For him, on his level, it was considered an affront to his stature of holiness, of piety, for him to go and ask this person to help him. Question. So, does this tell us that if we have a problem, that we just pray? Or should we go out there and try to do something about it? Should we go out there and try to make the proper connections to see who it is that can help us? I mean, which of the two is the right approach? Here, Yosef got punished for it, and he had to endure another 2 years, and as I suggested, 2 difficult years, because he tried to do the normal thing of, hey, here's an opportunity, here's a chance for me to make that connection, and he took advantage of it. He didn't say to him, I don't believe in Hashem, I don't trust in God. On the contrary, perhaps what was going through his mind was, wow, here's an opportunity that was sent to me from Hashem. Well, without going into too much detail, it's explained that for Yosef, someone on that level, As we know, Yosef is called Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous, the pious. For him, on his level, is expected an extreme devotion, an extreme level of faith in Hashem. But for the ordinary person, had that taken place with me or you, had that happened to us where we are suddenly afforded an opportunity to make a connection and to try to work things out, to try to make things work out, we have to actually take advantage of it. In fact, if you think about it psychologically, we tend to go to one extreme or the other. But it's very difficult for us to blend the two together. Psychologically, people sometimes, because deep down they kind of gave up hope, or I wouldn't use the word lazy, but they've literally fallen to a certain level of despair, which is synonymous with laziness, and they just don't do anything. And instead, to soothe themselves and to keep themselves some level of confidence, they resort to exclusively engage in prayer. And then you have the other extreme, where the person thinks he can do everything on his own, and he's going to fight and fight and fight, and doesn't even stop and think for a moment, maybe I should turn to Hashem, maybe I should pray. For the regular person, like us, like me and you, with our feet on the ground, we need to find a harmonious connection between the two. Yes, pray for that miracle. Yes, pray to Hashem. Put our trust in Hashem. At the same time, as Hashem wants us to do, is to make what we call the vessel, the receptacle, in which to receive, potentially, Hashem's blessing, Hashem's salvation. Thus, if we have an opportunity for a connection, or to do something, we must pursue it. And that really is the message here. For Yosef, and should we find ourselves being on that level, this would be a serious affront. For us, this is not something that we should do, namely to just, quote unquote, literally throw our trust in Hashem and not try to do anything, as we say, bidarkei hateva, in the norms of nature, within the confines of the natural course of things. I want to suggest something, being that Mikeitz, this Parsha, is always read on Hanukkah. I would suggest that in fact we also find this element in the miracle of Hanukkah. What happened? As we say in the prayer of thanks to Hashem, we say you put the many in the hands of the few, the wicked in the hands of the righteous. That's true. But remember, even the few who put their trust totally in Hashem, and they went with absolute selflessness, they didn't go without weapons. They didn't leave their swords home. They didn't go just running there aimlessly, expecting some miracle to happen just because they decided to get up and run. They still used some element, some form of down-to-earth, natural, I would say that what the natural resources provide, meaning when I say natural, I mean the order of nature, the order of the way the course of things go, in order to try to find it. The fact that they were few against the many, that was the miracle. But they didn't kill people with their fingers. They didn't kill people by spitting on them. They didn't kill the Assyrian soldiers by just looking at them and somehow forming some kind of supernatural rays with their eyes. They actually used swords. They used implements in order to connect it to reality. Shalom.